Welcome to the Realeyes The World Podcast. Today is December 12th, 2019, Thursday. I am recording the podcast a day earlier than usual, although I will have it posted at the current scheduled time. Anyhow, if you're listening to it now, the logistics have been worked out. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about suffering and the Four Noble Truths from Buddhism. I gave my podcast a listen last week, the second installment of a unknown length of series, but um, I it was hard to explain enlightenment, and I know at some point I was going over what desires are, or what exactly it is we all suffer from. And so I want to kind of backpedal. We did briefly touch on the Four Noble Truths. Might have just been the mention of the, I don't know if it's scripture, but these particular material we're going to reference. But today we're going to really break it down as to what it is, enlightenment or self-awareness has to offer, as far as what it is I may be raving about, or what other folks that you might have seen at some point may be raving about. And honestly, we're not raving about it. However, I say that in a way that I hope we have your attention. So, the Four Noble Truths are really simple. I'm gonna skim over them, which is I could do in less than a minute. But then I'm gonna go over each one because it's not as far as what the Four Noble Truths are. There's not much verbiage to it. Understanding them, on the other hand, that's where the discussion's to be had. So, the Four Noble Truths explains that the first one is basically to live is to suffer. That is the nature of suffering. And the second one is that there are origins to the suffering, which is caused by desire. Okay? And then the third one says that suffering can be overcome. It can cease. And then the fourth one says, in order to cease suffering, one must follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay? So essentially, the Four Noble Truths isn't a 1, 2, 3, 4 step by step. They're simply almost like 4 sentences. Okay? There is suffering. There are origins to the suffering. The suffering can be overcome, and it can be done, or that can be done, by following the Noble Eightfold Path. Alright? So let's get into the first one. And that one, again, the nature of suffering is basically from living. However, I don't believe that should be misconstrued as living in general, and that there are these 5 aggregates, they're called, which are basically, I would say, objects to our minds. If the way we're trained to think, I would say this makes most sense if you picture them as objects that your mind creates when you see that information. Okay? And so my theory is that these objects, which I've yet to name, the nature of them, I would say maybe even teases our minds to cling to them. I'll just say chocolate, for example. There's something in the mixture of ingredients of chocolate that has you craving more, and if you're not consciously thinking about it, you could see chocolate and it may even make you salivate. Okay, that's to say how deep this goes, that it covers both conscious and unconscious uh, unconsciousness. I don't know how to say it without reusing the word. So the whole thing with enlightenment is you bring awareness to it. Okay, so these five objects, the aggregates, the first one is form, and that's anything that you might be able to see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, right? So that's going to be with our five sensory. Um, the second aggregate is sensation. Okay, now these are going to compile on top of each other. Okay, so sensation is the feelings that you receive from form. Okay, so taking form and not making anything out of it, like, okay, let's say the chocolate. Okay, it smells sweet. Okay, before you say what it smells like, there is a smell. Okay, and so this is how this is getting broken down, and that you perceive smell. Okay, before any mental process, now you get the sensation. What is that smell triggering? What is, what's going on in your mind? And that could be, for example, again, the unconscious salvation or the conscious salvation or recognition that you do want that chocolate. All right. The third aggregate is perception. And this is going to be what your mind makes of the sensation and the form. Okay. So it, I guess let me explain this one and then I'll rethink on it. But this is, like I said, the chocolate smells sweet. So the fact that you labeled it is the perception of that's the third aggregate here. So the sensations, yeah, let me take a step back. The sensation is whether it's going to be pleasant, unpleasant, or maybe even nothing arises. It's like neutral. Okay, so you see chocolate, or no, you smell the chocolate. You recognize, okay, I like chocolate. That's a sweet smell. Well, uh, it causes pleasant feelings. Then you perceive it as oh, that is a sweet smell. Okay, and I'm sorry for any confusion, but um, those two are very close. The second and third are very close. However, the sensation is the focus of pleasantry, not pleasantry. Think of uh, a nail in your finger, or whatever. You mistakenly hit your finger with the hammer while driving a nail in. That's unpleasant. Okay, that's the sensation part. Your perception is, ouch, that hurt. Now we're gonna label it that what that unpleasantness was. That was a hammer to the finger. That's an injury. All right. Now the fourth aggregate, mental formation, and this would be your reaction to what's unfolding before you. Okay, and that's to say the former three aggregates, the entire scenario. Um, Now this is going to be, let's go back to the chocolate, like the unconscious salvation example. Your mind it has a mental formation about chocolate, and that, as I explained, it could unconsciously trigger you to salivate, even though you might not be hungry, whatever the case is. There are the sensations, pleasant feelings, the sweet smell associated with the chocolate. Okay, and so in the hammer example, uh, the fact that you injured yourself, you are almost trained instantly to withdraw, scream, or yelp. Um, really hone in on the sensation. Now, that's not to say that pain doesn't necessarily exist. And when we get to things like, okay, well, how can I ever cease of pain? There are ways to overcome that. I would say through mental training, but uh, yeah, the condition response to pain, as I guess that's what we can really discuss here. Not necessarily overcoming pain, but the not reacting. Okay, like for me, sometimes now I would instantly take a breath, because I could feel the emotions starting to arise. However, being fully in tune with things, for example, I still hit my knee. I don't remember when's the last time I was using a hammer, but I can tell you I probably stubbed my knee or toe somewhere within the last month or so. But instead of that reacting and maybe even cursing, I almost just instantly take a deep breath, and it's not, maybe it's an instant recentering technique. I've never really thought about it until now, but I just picture, okay, we'll break it down into the five aggregates too. The form, boom, I just had contact with an object. The sensation is unpleasant. The perception is that's pain or that's a bruise. I don't know what exactly I would make of it within these milliseconds of processing this, right? And in the mental formation, that's where you catch yourself. This is where awareness and enlightenment comes up, and that, okay, hold on. Am I reacting to this in a conditioned pattern to withdraw, yelp, walk it off, whatever the case is, however we might deal with pain? Um, I hope that the mental formation part, if that's not clear enough, please, leave comments, ask questions, direct message me, email me. Um, Love to discuss this stuff. And then the last aggregate is consciousness, and this is the awareness that any of your five senses brings when it interacts with the object. Okay. Um, and that's almost to label it like the first four. If we were to take the way our minds are trained to think, the first four you could almost say was one action, right? In the example I gave you guys, from stubbing your toe, processing what happened, catching the thoughts, the awareness. Okay, the awareness is boom. Now I feel the throbbing, the contact, where I hit that object. The awareness is okay. It's there. Let's not label it. Let's not label it pain. Let's not label it a bad thing. That's the awareness. Awareness, I would say, is like a mutual arising. You see light, you see colors. These are all happenings. You hit your leg is a happening. The pain that resulted, the way our human bodies are constructed with nerves and connected to our mind, that's what we label pain before you could almost detach from the label making. to just simply observe pain. No reaction. So, to take that back to the Four Noble Truths, which is what got us into that little bit of a lengthy discussion about the five aggregates, is all of that whole process I explained. Um, it's the nature of suffering. Clinging to any part of that process is suffering. Um, I mean, everything we do goes through our mind almost in that somewhat logical order, right? I don't want to, I say somewhat logical because at some point words fall off for all of this. Words lose meaning, and that everything is simply what it is. Um, and so to say something's logically, it's like it's almost just, I want to say it's naturally, like of nature. Like this is just simply the way it works. And mother, if want to say something about Mother Nature, I don't know. That's Mother Nature. Mother Nature grew the flowers we're looking at. Mother Nature created our mind to our bodies. And you got to think our eyes, the five senses, are almost like inputs for us, right? If you want to look at ourselves like computers, our peripherals are our touch, our sight, our ability to smell, our ability to taste, and whatever the other one is, I probably just name. Those are how we get our information from the world. Our brain would then be like the processor. And if you know anything about computers, processors simply follow instructions. And the way computers work, I guess it's a bunch of on and off switches or zero or ones. When you arrange those in a series, that's how your computers work. It starts processing information and et cetera, et cetera. Our brains aren't exactly to say blueprinted like a processor. You take information, you put it out. However, the way we make the world out to be is how we ended up. That's how we basically do end up training our brains. You know, on a bigger or larger scale, that could be like us telling our children and our parents telling us, and so on. Go to school, get a job, or get a degree, and get a job, have a family, retire, do the same things, pass that down the line. Like who? I don't. It's funny that you never stop to question that way of living until it's really brought up in this perspective. Because you can go anywhere else in the world, or not necessarily anywhere else, but you can go to various different places in the world that have different cultures and ways of living, where at least, and I speak from my perspective of how I was raised in the state, country, the culture. I never stopped to question how am I, is this actually the right way of living? I might have saw like National Geographic and seen some tribes, and I'm like, oh, that almost seems like a downgraded way of living. Why would I give up all my fancy technology and luxuries and live in the woods without all the social structure? Which it sounds really great now, to be honest. But without all the social structure, you and Mother Nature, one on one, mano a mano, or you might live with some people like in a tribe, and just live. And we get so enveloped in the, and I don't even know if that's the word, but we get so wrapped up in it that just simple living loses its enjoyment. Now everything's so competitive, or you gotta race to the top, you gotta race against time. um it is nice to slow down and go out there in the woods, I'll say. um Spend some time out there, because there's so much noise in the air. And I know I have background noise on this because I've got so many fans in this house. Fans of various types, like computer fans, power fans, the HVAC fan, etc. I got so many fans in this house. I can't dial it out of this microphone, and so to even stay in the woods that's next to a major highway kind of sucks. You gotta really get out there and turn off everything to really hear a very unique form of silence that for me, it can only be captured in meditation or out there in seclusion. But I know I just went off on a tangent there. I have my notes in front of me to remind me of today's topic, and that's getting back to the Four Noble Truths. Um, so I guess in short, I don't really recall where my tangent was going, but to live is to suffer. What I'm describing from my perspective at this point, simple living is not necessarily suffering. That's not the context of those words. Don't get them misconstrued with something that religion might teach you, that you're born with sin. That's not what this is saying. To live is to suffer. I mean, if I were to say there was a mistranslation, everybody's born with sin is everybody's born with this misunderstanding of how your mind breaks down things into these five aggregates. Okay? The second noble truth: suffering's origins are caused by desire. Um, and so this is where I got a little choked up in trying to explain. I feel like on the last podcast, or the last episode, but explaining desire. Okay, so it would be any form of attachment that you get to those five aggregates. Okay, so let's give some examples of what you could desire from each. So form. Um, you might like very vibrant colors. You paint your house, or you wear them. You paint your nails. Anything with those colors. That right there is a desire. Okay? If you were given a Christmas gift of a very boring brown colored turtleneck sweater, um, there's a good chance you're gonna have you might even be very good at concealing the feeling, but you could be very reserved. But there's a good chance you're like, ooh, this is painful to look at. This is not classy, or this is not my style. It's not vibrant. Whatever judgment you have, the fact that you have judgment there, um, that's origins. The origins of that judgment is from your desire to vibrant colors. Um, Now we can take this to a more serious form of desire, and that would be like addiction, right? Um, People get attached to drugs because of the mental high it brings. Um, Now, what you may label a high is it's something you have to experience. And every drug gives you a different high. Okay? But when you get high, there's a pleasure, and I've suffered from addiction. There's a pleasure um, that comes with doing it over and over again. It never gets old. It does at some point get old, but when it's really got a hold on you and you're in that moment, you're essentially living in the present. You're there now. However, sometimes that stems from trying to drown out feelings or whatever may be the case. And that, you get where I'm going. Addiction is abuse of a substance, no matter how big or small. I say that because you could be addicted to things that are not very harmful for you, like coffee, right? Or to, on the extreme end, heroin. But there's an attachment, a mental attachment, and we could say that's the mental formation aggregate that comes associated with the action, whether it's drinking coffee or shooting up heroin or smoking and whatever the preference is, right? Okay. There's also, now we say addiction. Addiction's an extreme form of attachment. So attachment itself is a desire. I used to love Porsches for the style, and I mean, I still think they're beautiful cars, but there was an attachment to the styling of it that just always blew me away. Um, it was almost like an obsession, and that's all from the, we could say, from the form and the perception um, aggregates, right? I was obsessed with the form, which I guess I could, the sight. I I can't really say the touch, but the sight of it and the perception of that uniqueness, that real, to me it looks like raw power, having the engine in the back, the wheels are wider than the front, etc. There is an attachment to that, and I say that as a car enthusiast. Um, and I know other people, they might be attached to reading books, favorite authors. That's an attachment. The fact that you have a favorite is an attachment. Now, that's not to say you're wrong for having this, but you need to recognize that, yeah, and this is like it would be a preference. Once you recognize that your attachment, whether it's genuine or if it's false, because some attachments, like to drinking coffee, um, you go on for so many years, you forget what life was like before coffee, and you never stop to reevaluate. Okay, do I really need coffee every day? That's recognition. Okay, I'm attached. This is from a desire, right? Because I love coffee. I love the mental boost, the roasted flavor, whatever you get from it. And then you would break that down. Okay, I do prefer coffee to tea. That's fine. You don't even have to justify it. But you need to recognize if you're doing it out of genuine uh preference for yourself, or if you're just a conditioned zombie, like people that would eat McDonald's or go to Starbucks every morning. Like those are habits, and yeah, maybe you will find you really love Starbucks over 7-Eleven or homemade, but some people are so lost in it all that just going to Starbucks is a morning routine. It's not for the coffee, it's just for the wake up, Starbucks, work, sleep, repeat. Okay, that's what we're recognizing here with these when we say, you know, to live is to suffer, and that are you living, or are you living in I don't even know what the word, a zombaic manner, in a zombie like manner. um so yeah, I don't know if we can get, and now I was gonna say I don't know if we can get any more thorough than that, but there is another side to this that I've not gotten into because of the whole illusion of words and the dualistic way of thinking we tend to have. But the fact that you don't like something is also like a desire. It could be a desire to not experience it, so to say. So that's not to say all the things you cling to or are attached to, or that we typically think of desire in a positive way, all the things you don't like are also considered the same thing. Okay, you don't like, I hate to slander broccoli all the time. I know I used it in another example previously, but if you don't like broccoli, you're resisting the fact that broccoli even exists. Okay, you don't have to have an opinion about broccoli. You could prefer not to eat broccoli, but when you go out of your way to not like broccoli, or and that's not to say if somebody offers you broccoli and you don't like it to just take it and eat it. No, you don't give in like that. But you know, that's not to say you're resisting broccoli in a bad way, because once you get past all the, again, the conditioned thinking, you could be denying broccoli truly, that you don't, you know, it doesn't agree with your stomach, whatever the case is. But to, you know, to have preferences and or I guess preferences and be against other things, it's the same thing. It's all desire. I desire not to experience broccoli. Um, Whereas the more Buddhist way of, or enlightened way of thinking about it, is to just let broccoli be. Don't cross broccoli's path if you don't want to. Nobody's forcing you to. And it also doesn't even need to be commented on that you avoided the broccoli. Because that in a way, if you think about it, is also the resistance to broccoli. That, you know, hey, I saw some broccoli and I didn't eat it today. Like, good for you. Thank you. The world's a better place because of that. No, nothing like that. It that's your ego going out of its way to tell somebody, it's like, hey, yeah, screw broccoli. I avoided it. Okay, that's very egoic way of saying it, but that's you know, let's get down to the nitty gritty of it. There's resistance to broccoli, and then there's a pride that you resisted it, right? Okay. So anyway, those are further in depth discussion. Let's stick to uh, the noble truths here. All right. The third one is that there is a way, or no, yeah, I guess the simple sentence of suffering can be overcome. Um, So I'm reading through here what I grabbed off, I think, Wikipedia. The other ones I didn't quite read, but this one, as far as the third and fourth one, the third one says there's a way to do it. The fourth one says this is the way to do it. So I think we might as well just combine the conversations, except actually the actual, not way to do it, but what the Buddha explains. Okay, so there is a way that you can overcome this the suffering, right? Because I know some people might still be like, I'm not suffering. Everything I do, I like da 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 da. There's nothing wrong with my life at this moment, and that may be very true. I'm not the one here to say you're living your life wrong or anything like that. But again, this all stems from the first uh, noble truth: to live is to suffer. Um, but when one realizes he's been playing a game his entire life, okay, and I say that because there's irony. Not that it's a video game, but it was almost like a game of hide and seek with yourself. And you would hear yourself pop up from time to time, and you would, for whatever reason, deny yourself, right? So, for example, let's say you didn't hold the door open for somebody. You thought about it, but then said, nah, nobody ever holds it for me. And kept going. That brief moment there, when you thought about holding that door, that spontaneous thought, that was you. Before, remember the 5 aggregates, before all your thinking patterns kicked in. There was a genuine you in there that said to hold that door. But then this other person, and we'll call him the other person. I don't like to call... I still don't 100% agree with the perception of the ego because of the different context it can be taken. Essentially, I'm referring to the ego, but in the way I understand ego at this point could be contradictory to what's even taught by some. But that other person told you, nah, wait, nobody's ever held the door for you. Why should you hold the door? Or you don't know that person, and you don't do favors for people you don't know, for strangers. No, that one thought you had there for a moment, should I hold this door, before you did any action, that was the genuine human that we all have in ourselves. Okay. When you understand how your body works and how your mind has been misfiling, I like to think of my mind like a filing cabinet, or it could be because I have one in my peripheral vision right now. But your mind has been filing information away in the wrong goddamn folders for years. And that's the irony of when you come to enlightenment, to realize the game you've been playing. The very fact that, somebody's, and like for holding the door example, the very fact that somebody had that thought and then they shut it down, that person would unconsciously be suffering, because that's not the only time those thoughts come up. They come up in every other, should I share? If somebody asks for, money outside, it comes up all the time. Somebody could be as simple, can you pass me a napkin, and you don't do it, or whatever. You go out, again, we got to get out of duality. It could be that you go out of your way to hold the door for everybody, or what do you call it? Give anything. Pass me a napkin, sure. I'll give you a pack of them. Okay, that is the other end of the spectrum. Not to say, the denying yourself. The overly feeding of the self is also suffering. Okay? Now, let's also not consider suffering necessarily a bad thing. Okay, right? Because suffering is part of the game. if you, I don't want to say if you're not enlightened, you're suffering, but essentially that's the gist of what this teaching is. My perspective on it would be, everybody's got to put their time in. I'm not gonna label you suffering, and I'm not suffering. But everybody's got to play the game to realize the irony of it all. I mean, the very fact to have negative things unfold in front of you and they not phase you like they used to, and this is not to reminisce on the past, but I gotta relate this somehow. But you eventually learn that it was always yourself that was making you unhappy. If there was ever anything unhappy and I don't even want to say unhappy, but down in the dump or resentment or regret, all of those feelings that kind of sink your heart. That sink your heart feeling. To have that completely gone from your life, um, it's it's a crazy thing that it's even a possibility. But that's not to say it'll never come up again, right? Because life's gonna always throw you curveballs, and what the Buddha taught here, Buddhism, I don't even. He taught a manual on how to live without those heart sinking feelings. Um, Plain simple, but it opens your eyes to the irony of it all. Um, and so I know we're on the last aggregate or the third and the fourth at the same time. It can be overcome. The noble eightfold path uh, is the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. We'll go ahead and continue this in next week's episode. Because this in itself has 8 items, which I hope I can cover without going off on too many tangents. Um, yeah, I'm giving them a skim right now. I'll go ahead and I'll name them off real quick and we'll wrap this up. Right view. So the eightfold path says you need to realize how to end suffering. You need to have the right view, the right intentions, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right concentration, and the right mindfulness. Okay? Hopefully that leaves you guys wanting to know more there. I'm sure I can give plenty more examples of all of these that I could relate to. But anyways, folks, um, if you're following me, or if you're listening to this now, hit that subscribe button. I'm still setting up all the social media venues and a website, so I'm not exactly spamming everything when I upload a new podcast. The current schedule is to upload these on Fridays, and that may even change in the future, but as of this third episode on December 12th, 2019, the goal is every Friday. And so if you subscribe to the channel, you can turn the notification thing on, and when I upload it, it'll give you a pop-up on your phone, right? Or I don't know exactly all the notification venues, but I know on the mobile you get the pop-up as if somebody texts you. But otherwise, yeah, just keep an eye on me, guys. I got more. I got a lot more to say. Um, got a lot of things I'm trying to work together, um, without forcing or overdoing it. So be patient with me if you're waiting for more and more. Also, let me know. That might help me rearrange priorities, or have a reason to rearrange priorities. Okay? So thank you guys for listening. And if you have any input, questions, or comments, or anything you want to discuss, again, you can leave them in any of the whatever form of media you're listening to this on. Um, leave a message there, or shoot me a message through that media account. All right. Thank you.